我们不只要照顾保护2300万台湾人民，我们更有责任维护区域的和平。所以，我们一定要让台海没事，那么世界都没事。今天是战是和，路是靠人走出来的。
Good evening and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Wen-Ti. Taiwan's opposition party Kuomintang's chairperson Cheng embarked on her China trip on April 7th, marking the first time in a decade that a KMT leader has set foot in China. The Taiwanese opposition framed it as a peace visit. The visit is widely seen as an opportunity for China's leadership to create a more conciliatory atmosphere and send a message to the people of Taiwan. The trip was announced shortly after the White House revealed that the U.S. President Donald Trump would postpone his own planned visit to China, prompting speculation over whether Beijing may use this occasion to signal to Washington that cross-strait dialogue and reconciliation are still possible and to suggest adjustments to the U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. Also, at the critical moment when Taiwan's legislative yuan is deliberating a special defense budget, what impact might this visit have? Joining me tonight for our conversation, our speakers. First, we have Courtney Smith, political analyst specializing in Taiwanese politics and geopolitics. And we also have with us for the first time, of course, Miguel or Yang Guangshun, co-founder of U.S. Taiwan Watch. Guangshun, Courtney, thank you so much for coming to the show. Since assuming office, Kuomintang's chairperson Cheng has repeatedly expressed her willingness to visit the mainland China to promote the peaceful development of relations between the Chinese Communist Party and the Kuomintang, the KMT, as well as pushing for cross-strait relations. Let me quote from this reading. I am authorized to announce that the CPC Central Committee and General Secretary Xi Jinping welcome and invite Chairperson Cheng to lead a KMT delegation to visit Jiangsu, Shanghai, and Beijing from April 7 to 12. This announcement from the Taiwan Affairs Director of China at the moment, Song Tao. So I want to start, I think, with Donovan here. What's your overall assessment about the significance of this trip?
Well, looked at locally, I think this is an interesting shift by the KMT toward a strategy that they were pursuing up until roughly a decade ago. So domestically, I think that's quite important because, again, the KMT has shifted track, and you could say that from the period of about 2005 to 2016, it was on one track, shifted to another under a series of party chairs, and then now is shifted back to that older stream. So there's a shift politically there. It looks like obviously Zheng Liwen is trying to influence the political direction of Taiwan in general, but obviously she can't, as she's of course heading the opposition party. Geopolitically, it's a little bit murkier. I think from the Chinese perspective, they're looking to get some wins out of this, but primarily I think the messaging is for people internally within China.
Right, and the same question for you, Guangshun. What's your overall overview of this visit by KMT chairperson to China at the moment?
So just like you mentioned, this is the first time in 10 years a KMT chair visit China. But this is probably the first time in 20 years, if you look back in history, that the KMT chair is in a really powerful positions to visit China. If you look back to the time in 2005 in Lianzhan, he has some pretty powerful position in the legislature, although the KMT was not in the presidential office. Right, and that was a little bit different from her predecessor, let's say Avery Chu or Hong Xiuzhu back in 2015 or 16. That means that if Jenny was she copy or echo the talking point from the CCP, that means that this kind of dynamic interactions may actually be meaningful or matters or have a ramification in Taiwanese politics internally and in the Taiwan-U.S. relations in general.
All right, so I think I hear both of you sort of mention about two distinct KMT visions or approaches when it comes to how to manage relations with Beijing, isn't it? So I think, all right, so we've done overview. I think next natural question to ask from me is why the timing? Why, Courtney, do you think it's happening now?
I think that's a good question, and I don't think that there's necessarily a really good answer. The reason is because this was dropped fairly suddenly on a Monday morning. The KMT, as far as we can tell from the outside, they received an invitation from the CCP, and they announced it roughly concurrently at about 10 in the morning, and then they hastily conducted an 11 a.m. Press conference, which very few people could make because it was too quick. So what the decision was made on the CCP side. What their motivations are a little bit unclear, but I think we have some topics coming up that will cover that a little bit more. But I think fundamentally, what they're looking at, the CCP was looking at trying to possibly, I think any time during this period would have been fine. But I think that domestically, this is a welcome distraction during a period of uncertainty and quite a bit of bad news domestically going on.
And for that, Guangsheng, what do you think about what's in it for Chen Li-wen, Chairperson Chen Li-wen, or for that matter, what's in it for KMT to be pursuing this trip at this timing?
That question can be divided, but can be answered in two folds. For example, for Chair Chen Li-wen, definitely she will consider her personal political capitals and especially the most immediate political interests, so that she can, let's say, carry the torch from the former President Ma Ying-jeou or even her predecessor like Lian Zhan to be like a bridge or like a face of the cross-strait relations. That is not only that will not only be her legacy in the far future, but also becomes her instant political capitals, so that she can has a very strong say, let's say, for a domestic audience, so that she can has a direct outreach to Xi Jinping himself, and that means tremendously to a lot of the audience. And especially, there's a rumor saying that Chen Li-wen may have a visit in Washington. So this visit with Xi Jinping may gives her like a very strong positions when she meets with various audiences in Washington.
So it sounds like a legacy and political mandate or capital building for Chairperson Chen Li-wen there. And you also, my audience, you hear it here first. Apparently, Chen Li-wen might have a DC trip coming up soon-ish after this. How about you, Courtney? What do you think about what's in it from KMT and Chen Li-wen's perspective? What are the incentives?
Well, from her perspective, this is an ideological move for her. She deeply believes in the cause, and she fundamentally views herself as Chinese and Taiwanese as Chinese and part of China. And from that viewpoint, they view the separation of Taiwan from what they would term as the motherland as a great historical tragedy, again, from her perspective. So, as Guangxun mentioned, legacy is a big issue here. And so for KMT leaders, going all the way back to Lian Zhan and Ma Ying-jeou, the idea is that they are trying to restore the glory of the motherland and reunite it, and this is their way of having a footnote in history. Ma Ying-jeou, in his name, the Jiu actually refers to a historical concept of Chinese unity. So this is what this is about for her, is that she gets the opportunity to try and push forward this greater China idea, and she hopes to put that one step forward and bring it all to, bring China back together and then be part of history or legacy is a good word.
You talk a lot more about the ideology or identity part of our calculus, which I think is very interesting addition to our discussion here. And I would ask you, Guangshun, about, we discussed the KMT side's perspective or Chen Li-Wen side's perspective. There's, of course, the other end of the equation, that's Beijing. And we know that from the announcement from Song Tao, that's Beijing's Taiwan Affairs handler, he talked about how Chen Li-Wen has previously expressed interest in going to China many times, quote unquote. So then, why is Beijing inviting Chen Li-Wen over now, and what's Beijing seeking to gain from this trip?
So this trip, of course, Chen Li-Wen already expressed for multiple times, and that's also true that she wished to visit Beijing and hopefully to meet with Xi Jinping. And we'll also know that it is like a ritual for the Chinese side to say that it always passively to accept your invitations, like right, even Xi Jinping's phone call with Donald Trump, he said that, well, I received the invitation so that we have this phone call. But like I said, around this time, something had to happen diplomatically. And if you remember that 2 years ago when Ma Ying-jeou for a second time met with Ma Ying-jeou, it was also arranged, guess what, April 10th, exactly the same day when Chen Li-Wen will schedule her visit. So I want to say that nothing to expect something new from this visit, but China already expressed very clearly the agenda for her visit, for Chen Li-Wen's visit, that to promote the reunification. And if you look at some of Chen Li-Wen's speech, she also echoed Chinese talking points about the anti-Japan sentiment, for example, the World War II history, which is like a shared history or historical narrative between the KMT and the CCP. So I guess the point is that the CCP will wish to see Chen Li-Wen to echo their talking point, their narratives.
Right, I appreciate that point about emphasizing the anti-Japan sentiment and the history of CCP and KMT fighting alongside each other in a sense during World War II. That allows them to build a common bridge and I guess through that shared struggle experience.
Exactly.
What kind of message, again, from Beijing's side, do you think Beijing's trying to send through this visit?
Well, when looking at the CCP, I think the first thing you need to do is look at what because fundamentally what the CCP is about is domestic control and either maintaining or expanding its own power. So its domestic audience is always primary. Now for the CCP, they want to be seen as making some sort of effort toward peace, regardless of whether they're sincere about it or not. And of course, we don't know. But because even if they're not, by at least having the appearance that they have talked to people on the Taiwan side, if they decided to, for example, attack or invade, they would have an excuse to say, see, we tried, it's their fault. So this provides them with that kind of message that they can give to their own people if they want to do actually proceed toward a war or an invasion. They have that in their pocket.
Right, okay, that's a great point about centrality of domestic audience from Beijing's perspective. I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about let's call it the bigger picture, which is that we know that this trip is happening about a month before the upcoming Trump-Xi summit itself. Now, one thing that happened in between, of course, is the Iran conflict. Due to the Iran conflict, U.S. President Donald Trump has postponed his own planned trip to Beijing, which had been scheduled previously for early April. Take a look.
A long-awaited meeting with President Xi in China will now take place in Beijing on May 14th and 15th. First Lady Melania and President Trump will also host President Xi and Madam Peng for a reciprocal visit in Washington, D.C. at a later date to be announced this year.
All right, Guangshun, so next question for us then, since this trip between KMT and CCP is happening just before the Xi-Trump summit itself, how do you see these summits are linked, if at all?
We know that this trip, I mean, Chinyeh Wen's trip was, she expressed her wish to visit there, but it was not decided. What was decided was that Trump's visit to China. So, but now that plan has been changed, so that probably Beijing or Xi Jinping has another plan, has a plan B, so that he can give a political message to Donald Trump before their meetings. So, like you say, the trip, the Xi Jinping and Donald Trump's meeting was postponed because Donald Trump, I believe, that wished to meet Xi Jinping on a stronger positions, like he wants to settle down the situations in the Persian Gulf, and so that you're presenting before Xi Jinping as a stronger figure. And also, but meanwhile, Xi Jinping may also want to send a message to Donald Trump, say that he is an actor who has the dominance in the cross-strait relations by meeting with the leader of the biggest opposition party in Taiwan, which has the real say in the Taiwan's domestic affairs, or even foreign affairs. For example, the KMT legislators already blocked the defense budget, special defense budgets, or the U.S. arms sales. So that also gives the Xi Jinping also strong positions when he meets with before he meets Donald Trump.
All right, I think that's great. So both sides, U.S. and China, then are thinking about postponing it so that for U.S. they can approach China from a position of strength, isn't it? That they take care of Iran first so they can go to China without other distractions. And for China, they want to show before beating Trump that, hey, we got some people we can talk to inside Taiwan too as well. So maybe it's not, Taiwan is not entirely your home court in that sense. So
yeah, I mean, if I may jump in, I think that there's several things going on as far as the Trump-Xi meeting. Now, there's been some talk that this this was intentionally put prior to the Trump-Xi meeting. I don't know if that's actually the case. Because originally the Trump-Xi meeting would have been earlier. From Zheng Liwen's point of view, she had said repeatedly that she wanted to meet with Xi Jinping first and then make a trip to the United States, all before June, because after that she'll be busy with the election. But something I do think that, whether this was intentionally planned or not, I do think that the message that Xi will want to carry to Donald Trump is to use this meeting and a lot of the language that Xi will use that will echo his language to try and portray this as an internal Chinese matter, not an international issue. And so I think that he'll use this to underscore that point to Trump that Taiwan is domestic. It's an internal issue. There's also some speculation about that Xi will try to get Trump to reduce arms sales to Taiwan. And again, that domestic framing would help with that. And then the other issue is changing the language on Taiwan sovereignty. The U.S. has very nuanced language, but to get something more concrete and change that nuance.
That's interesting. And how about you, Guangsheng? How do you think this particular summit between KMT and CCP might have in terms of implication on cross-strait relations?
Or I would say that probably the effects will be limited, both to the meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping or in the cross-strait relations in general. Because we see that from the last phone call between Trump and Xi Jinping, both of them trying to strive for the genocide in power. And I believe that there are like 10 issues that Trump mentioned in his statements. But Xi Jinping only mentioned 2, and one of them are Taiwan. When in Trump's side, Taiwan is just 1/10 of the issues, right? So it doesn't
message discipline gap in that sense.
Oh, yeah, of course. And it seems that it doesn't mean that Taiwan is not important, but Donald Trump doesn't prioritize this one. So I doubt if a meeting between Chinyeh Wen and Xi Jinping will change his mind. And also from the cross-strait relations in general, there are already a couple of predecessors for Chinyeh Wen that visited Taiwan, although Chinyeh Wen is in the stronger positions. But what really matters is the local elections in the end of this year. But still like 7 months to go before the elections. So the ramification may be limited because there's still a long way to go.
Right, I'll use my headlines might take over in the interim, right? It's a long time, 7 months in the election.
Of course.
All right, and thanks for bringing the focus back home to Taiwan. So I want to talk more about what's happening in Taiwan, especially in the parliament at the moment. Now, on the eve of KMT chairperson Cheng Wen's visit to China, a recent U.S. Senate delegation visiting Taiwan has urged Taiwan's government to pass a special defense budget of up to almost $40 billion to build asymmetric capabilities and strengthen Taiwan's self-defense capabilities in order to deter China's military threat. The delegation also noted that Washington is closely monitoring the bill's progress in the legislative yuan. Take a look.
Taiwan must continue to take bold steps to build its defensive capabilities, and we believe that it will, based on what we've heard. It's crucial that all parties in Taiwan come together to approve robust supplementary defense spending, a package that enables not only purchases of critical American equipment, but also asymmetric capabilities that are produced right here in Taiwan.
All right, Courtney, natural question for us to ask. Will this KMT visit to China potentially affect Taiwan's parliament's progress when it comes to passing the defense budget bill or not?
I think that depends a bit on what happens during the trip. If she gives the DPP a lot of ammunition, it could hurt the KMT, and the KMT is internally split on the defense issue. However, if she gets some public relations wins out of this, it may strengthen the wing of the party that opposes the President Lai's $40 billion plan. So, I think a little bit depends on how this turns out. However, I don't see it affecting a lot in the short term because I think this is more of an internal fight within the KMT. And I don't know how much this trip can actually impact that because you have the caucus convener, Fu Quanxi. He seems to be siding with Zheng Liwen in opposing major spending. They have the 380 billion NT plus N plan, which is significantly smaller than President Lai's proposed 1.25 trillion NT budget. And of course, now we quoted here Senator Shaheen. She actually referred to, in her comments, she also talked about Taichung Mayor Liu Xiaoyan's proposal, and she's also within the KMT and a potential presidential candidate in 2028. She suggests that the party should back about 800 million to 1 trillion NT. And so there's a split in the party there.
Right, so internal diversity even within KMT when it comes to defense budget. So, Guangshi, I'm wondering, so if Taiwan's parliament manages to, at the end of the day, actually pass this almost $40 billion US defense budget, what signal would it send to international observers? And what signal would it send if it failed to pass it?
Well, there can be two types of narratives over there on the success or a failure of the passage. One is that if it failed, international external observers may interpret that as a signal that the Taiwanese are not serious about its own defense. The most famous commentator will be the Elbridge Colby, the Undersecretary of War. But before he entered the office. He doesn't talk about that much. But we still need to remember that there are isolationist voices, say like Tucker Carlson in the conservative camp saying that Taiwan is too far to defend for the United States. And remember that there may be the sentiment of war fatigue after this over 1 month of war in Iran. That's one possibility. And second narrative or options will be like maybe the United States or American leaders need to double down its efforts on stressing the importance for Taiwanese to strengthen its defense. So I believe that that is the second options will be more like that. So, like for example, the AIT director Raymond Green, he met with all the political leaders in Taiwan, and of course you mentioned Lu Xiuyan or Huang Guochang also visited United States to talk about these issues, and we see groups of the Congress members visit Taiwan to stress this importance. So I believe that the later one, the second options will be more like the case.
Thank you. Yes, I remember that point of Albert Jacoby and how during one of his press conference or Q&A at Munich Security Conference, he talked about how tough love for Taiwan might be the playbook at the moment. All right, that's all the time we have today. But thank you, Guangshen, Courtney, so much for coming onto our show and for sharing your insight with us today. All right, that's our show. On behalf of our team here at Taiwan Talks, I'd like to thank you, viewers at home, for tuning in. Come check us out on YouTube. And until next time, it's good night from us from Taipei.